We are here in Bakersfield and we are going on a tracking adventure with wildlife tracker and naturalist Sophie Mazowita.
We've got more deer tracks through here. Every new piece of wildlife sign that I learn to recognize just helps light up the woods with all the activity that's out here. And a walk through seemingly empty woods just becomes all the more rich. And in the wintertime, there's tracks all over the place here, and so we can see that there's stories, but some of the signs are a lot more subtle. So we're on a private parcel of a few hundred acres in Bakersfield. It's private conserved land. I come here regularly to monitor a set of trail cameras that I've placed out for this landowner, so they're curious to know what wildlife is moving across the landscape. Lots of activity out here. There's a really nice mix of forest and wetland area, beaver pond, stream. We see beaver activity, we see fishers, we see otter and mink making use of the waterways, we see raccoons, lots of coyote and deer activity too. There's lots of deer wintering area here. It's a busy place. It might be the last really good tracking day of the season, but you can track it any time of year. Winter snow is great, but other times of year you can go looking for a wildlife sign. I think sandy beach or the muddy shoreline of a river. So there's tons of opportunity to pay attention to wildlife sign at all times of the year. Do you see the bird tracks?
I do.
These are ruffed grouse tracks. A lot of people will commonly call this bird a partridge.
That's weird.
But it's this you ever heard that in the woods?
No.
I track for a lot of reasons, right? I track to put out game cameras, to see who's active on the landscape, to inform landowners, to inform habitat connectivity work, and of course for fun too. And oftentimes it's about picking a trail to follow, usually the trail of a carnivore, and reading their story. This is something else, yeah, so we can get into assessing a set of mystery tracks, right? And long linear shapes, I mean, they're the fingers of this animal coming off of a broad palm pad or heel pad. What do you think? Does this look like a little human hand?
Almost monkey.
And so this pattern of a smaller, it's a front track next to a hind track, is really distinctive of raccoons.
It's a raccoon.
This is raccoons walking in a particular way. Life in the winter, I mean, it depends who you are, right? So the deeper snow conditions can lead to exhaustion. There's definitely a lack of plant food relatively on the landscape. So we've got deer, for instance, that are living off of their fat stores. As you get towards this stage of the later winter, that's great for coyotes, right? If you're somebody who's looking to eat deer, I certainly feel a lot of empathy when I think about some of the winter conditions that we experience, right? We've had a pretty cold winter this year, a cold and snowy winter. We've experienced just a little bit of how hard it is to track through deep snow. But all of these animals are equipped, right? They've got the instincts, they've learned the survival techniques, and not to say that it isn't hard, but they are still able to survive or even thrive, just live on this landscape. And you can see that they came and took an interest in that little dig over there. This is all dug out through here, and there's tunnels that continue. So this is from red squirrels that maybe have a food cache. Have you heard the term naturalist crawl before? No. Yeah, you plan your mile or half-mile hike or just pick an area that you want to explore, and sometimes you don't leave the edge of the parking lot. And other times the goal might be, I want to cover ground.
Now that's got to be a kitty.
Do you have cats?
Yes,
do you like cats? So everything's a cat for you, right?
Or it could be a dog, I suppose. Maybe a coyote?
Cool. So yeah, recognizing that there's 4 toes showing up in these tracks. There's kind of a hint of claws showing up in the tracks. And actually right here at the tip of these tracks is the nicest. You can see these 2 little indentations. So my question is always, what's the overall shape of the track? How much weight is in the palm pad versus the toes? And this is a very toe-heavy track. Based on this size, it looks like a small coyote. Felines have a lot more weight in their palm pad, and so we're usually looking for a much broader pad behind those 4 toes, whereas canines really put their weight up on their toes. There's a true to size average coyote track in comparison with ours. So there's an average size red fox. Yeah, it's always worth asking, there's some overlap in size of, say, the hind foot of a coyote versus the front foot of a red fox. So they're now moving in a different way, right? This is our same coyote trotting down the driveway. So connecting people to wildlife through my education work, and then also understanding where habitat connections are taking place. What are the pinch points? What are critical habitat areas for wildlife? This looks like lots of footprints. Yeah, deer party coming up through this way. Yeah, deer, herbivores generally will be creatures of habit to some degree, right? They'll have trails that they use repeatedly, and so we might be looking at examples of that, these repeat use trails. And especially as the snow gets deeper, it's to their benefit to gather up in bigger numbers, pack down trails, usually under the cover of hemlocks, the green foliage that we can see here. Of course, there are animals that stay active through the winter, and then there's others that migrate away or will experience periods of torpor, or what more commonly gets referred to as hibernation. Right? Yeah, lots of deer activity down here.
No, it's just happening.
And we're coming into the mating season, or just coming out of it for a lot of animals, like the coyotes and the foxes have just bred, the bobcats are in the thick of it or just coming out of it, and then the otters and fishers are next. Yeah, generally spring, right? You generally want to give birth at a time of abundance. It's going to sound weird, but I want to take you towards that utility pool.
Okay.
This is where we can be like the deer, right? You walk in each other's footprints. Oh.
Yeah, I think I'm going to punch through the snow.
There it is.
Yeah.
Here's our coyote coming through.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of those days. Yeah, now we wish we had the snowshoes. Tracking on a utility pole. Yeah, that's pretty classic for our snow conditions today. And there's this marking here that's coming in sideways.
Antlers.
Ooh, antlers are a good guess. This is actually, though, a sideways bite from a black bear. A lot of the world of animal marking comes down to communication and leaving scent. And so this is their way of depositing a mark, depositing some scent. Bears will be rubbing against a pole. It kind of looks like they're scratching an itch, but they're also leaving scent in that way. They'll sometimes leave hair snagged there, and then they reach over and they take bites.
I'll just go in your footprints.
Yeah.
You can do all the work for me.
I'm happy to do the post-holing. How do you feel about stream crossings?
Do I get wet?
Grew up in Ottawa, Canada. Came to Vermont in 2011 to study in the Field Naturalist Program. So that was graduate school. And I offer education and consulting services through my own organization, Track and Connection, and with a host of nonprofit partners and towns that I work with and private landowners. Also notice the tracks are a little less clear through here, right? We've got some older tracks, there's crustier snow. Maybe animals were staying up on the snow surface, so it's not as easy to see who's been by. Tracking in a serious way for about 10 years. I was introduced to it maybe 10 years or 5 years before that. I was working as a park ranger up in Canada, and all the people I knew who were wildlife trackers just came in with the best stories. And I've now become one of those people who will come in from the woods and I'll start describing a scene that I saw, right? There was a bobcat that hunted a deer and I found where they had cached it in the snow and tracks all over the place. And you end up describing these scenes as if you've seen the animal, even though we've just seen the tracks or we've seen the sign and the stories that are left behind. My husband calls me a fecophile because of, my fondness for animal scat. And now I see a piece of scat on the ground, right? Animal poop. And it's just this invitation to understand the scent marking behavior, right? Poop is about a whole lot more than just getting rid of waste. It's communication, communication of territory. There's maybe other urine, smells being communicated in that scent post. And then it's also this indication of what an animal's been feeding on. And so a scat really represents the ecology of an animal, right? Their relationship with this landscape. This is really old scat. Doesn't really look like much, right?
Why would you poop on a log?
Maybe you're somebody who likes to spend a lot of time at stream edges or wetland edges. We're on top of a frozen stream surface right now. A big part of tracking is just knowing where to look. And this is a spot where raccoons routinely leave scat. So raccoons are one of the animals that makes a latrine. They will poop repeatedly in the same locations. And oh, I want to see if I can. This is an example of some of that really subtle wildlife sign that we were talking about, right? There's a tiny little hole in this huge hemlock tree, and you can actually see that material is spilling out here. It doesn't look like much. Like this is a fragment of a seed that's left here, and just based on this hole size, it looks like a deer mouse or white-footed mouse would be the culprit here. So maybe tiny little scats in here as well. Oh, we're going to swap onto another trail and drop down into the stream drainage here. You can see from the number of tracks on the ground right here that there's been some activity. It all looks like footprints, but then we do have a pile of additional scat here.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Pellets, and to see just this amount, right, a big pile like this all in one place. This is our white-tailed deer scat. And deer actually don't make latrines, so they just poop as they move across the landscape. That pile is just a single event. Yeah, this is a young beech tree. When we see a clean 45-degree cut like that, it's an indicator of rabbits or rodents. The deer might be interested in the cover here, and they're probably interested in this greenery as food. Tracking it's a series of mysteries, right? Like we notice that there's been a lot of activity here. We see old snowed-on deer scat. We see a bunch of tracks, and oftentimes we need to remind ourselves to expand our awareness and what we're looking at, and remember to look up and look all around. And you can see little marks where teeth have just lifted pieces of the bark here, all in a line. And this is the work of a red squirrel. So this is a scent marking station for them. So this is the spot to look, right? It's about knowing where to look. Low branches off of a dominant conifer. This is a really weaselly way of moving, right? Minks are little members of the weasel family, and see these tracks are at a stagger, 2 by 2.
Oh, that's a deer bed.
So when you find a deer bed, there's this invitation to, well, you can look for deer hairs. A wavy quality to them. And another way to identify them is that they hold a bend. Like if I make a little bend, they kink. So here's that back end of the deer. Here's where they pushed up off of their cannon bones as they were getting up out of the bed. And so their head was pointed in this direction. Like this was the view that they had. And in this particular location is set because there's a forest road that comes down across the stream here, and it's a spot where wildlife tends to cross. The otters on this landscape work as circuits. There's a bigger beaver pond system out on this landscape. Ultimately, it really comes down to connection, right? Just connections on the landscape, helping others connect, and tuning into that power of observation, and just becoming more connected to what's out here.
So the next time you're walking in the woods, look around you very carefully and see if you can find evidence of the animals who live here. And we will get stuck in Vermont with you again real soon.
Do you need a hand?
No, I'm okay. Oh, geez. Oh, I meant to do that. I'm still lying down like a deer. I'm taking a nap. I fell.